Hey you guys, in today's discussion we are going to be talking about Monte Carlo. Now, why is this? Because there's a lot more recent stuff that I feel like I would like to add to the whole Monte Carlo history and facts and all that stuff, so we're going to go and do that. So we're going to have to start back in, I believe, 1996. Now, this, I believe, was the first year of Monte Carlo. We've seen a 1997 catalog. I haven't seen a 96, but according to some of the catalogs I have, they were founded in 96. So that's just what I'm going to say. Now, at this point, they were a division of Encon, and they were basically the higher quality, more showroomy stuff. Like, they had much better quality. Well, much better, I can't actually say that, but it's probably a little bit better than most of the other Encons. And in the early 90s, some of the designs, like, I can't remember what it was called, but they had a few fans that look very similar to some of the Monte Carlos we saw in the earlier Monte Carlo phase. And that's because some of the Encon Premier products got moved over to the Monte Carlo line, and some other designs, they sort of got their own spin in the Monte Carlo line. For example, you guys are familiar with the Turbo Swirl, right? Well, in early Monte Carlo days, when they were still owned by Encon, it said they had a fan called the Turbo, which was the Turbo Swirl just with straight blades. So, you know, they definitely had sort of their own thing going on with some of the designs and other things. They were just pretty similar to what they already had. Now, it was in the late 90s when Encon got bought out by the Angelo team and the Westinghouse and all that crap. So basically, Encon went over with all of them, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about Monte Carlo. What happened to Monte Carlo? Well, it's sort of, I don't know if there's any definite thing, but I think what happened is that either Generation or Seagull purchased them. And here's why. In some of my catalogs, it says a division of Seagull Products, Inc. I do not know when they started saying Generation brands. I'm going to take a look here. I have this is the oldest Monte Carlo catalog I've got. And on the back, you can see, if I focus it in, oh, it's going to be backwards. Dang it. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. I can't remember how it works. But if you can read that, it says a division of Seagull Products, Inc. And nowhere on here does it mention Generation. So something tells me that it was Seagull, most likely, who bought them or took over the Monte Carlo line. And you'll notice that when Seagull started making their own fans, a few of the designs were very similar to Monte Carlo's. The Celebrity Deluxe was very similar to the Designer Supreme. The, there was, I think it was first called the Quality Max, or something like that. But before that, it was called, what was it? The Main Street, I want to say, was their really basic fan that was pretty similar to the Homeowners. They had a fan very similar to the Discus as well, and there were some other things as well that were basically very, very similar to what Monte Carlo was offering. Oh, and then there were both the Panorama and one of the other outdoor fans that was basically just a Weatherford. So yeah, you know, they took some of those designs and they just sort of sold them as their own. But in terms of Monte Carlo, though, they still kept on designing fans, you know. And from the late 90s to through the 2000s, what they were really good at doing is having a couple more neat contemporary designs, a few more basic designs, some high performance designs, some outdoor designs, and then some more really wacky, very decor specific designs like the Cheetah fan or the Bengal fan, and then fans also kind of like the Mandalay and the Veracruz and some of those other things. That's what Monte Carlo was really good at. They had some just really sort of wacky, interesting designs that you wouldn't see from anyone else. And that is one thing I really like about late 90s, 2000s era Monte Carlo. They just had some really, really neat stuff. And quality at this point was not horrible either. I have a 2001 Peninsula fan, and it is very, very well made. It's a great fan. Anyways, so somewhere though, and you know what, let's take a look at another Monte Carlo, shall we? This one here is, I believe, 2005. And so on 2005 here, it still says that it is division of Seagull. Now, I do believe that this was the, yes. So it was most likely 2006 or 2007 when they merged with Generation brands. And at this point, Generation Brands, I believe, I think at this point they had already bought Feist and they owned Feist. And so originally Feist was Murray Feist, but when Generation bought them, they dropped the Murray and it just became Feist. It's that or that happened a little bit before the Generation purchase. I can't remember. That's not really important to the story here. But anyways, at that point, Generation owned them. But both Seagull and Monte Carlo, they kept doing their own thing. They kept introducing more designs. And the further we got into the 2000s, the less we saw that really, really unique stuff. We still had some, but they started focusing a lot more traditional and ornate and classic designs and a few other more cheap and builder outdoor products. But yeah, that's what they started doing. And then that sort of kept happening throughout the early 2010s. And I've seen pretty much all the Monte Carlo literature. The one I haven't seen is 2010, but on the website it doesn't look like there's anything really different that we wouldn't see anywhere else. But yeah, then we moved to 2012, I think is the next important point. In 2012 is when the logo changes. It changes from this one here to the what was the current one, which is where it was like you had Monte and then some flower looking thing and then Carlo on the other side. And yeah, that's pretty much the most recent logo before they got rid of it, which I'm pretty sure now have. Well, Monte Carlo's done, so I can only imagine. But anyways, yeah, so they changed that. And this is when a lot of those older designs started to get axed. This was the beginning of the end for old Monte Carlo, really. And then 2013 came around, they started introducing more designs, and they kept getting rid of older Monte Carlos. 2014, this year is really when stuff went down. Fans like the Centro, the Designer, and quite a few others, they got redesigned, and the old designs were basically axed, and the new ones were in. And 2015, 2016, this kept on happening. Well, they kept on introducing more and more new, more designer, more contemporary, more clean products. Most of the traditional products at this point were gone. And then this kept on happening. And I think I'll stop around 2018, because here is where I need to talk about some things. Basically, this was the time where the buyouts involving Generation, all these brands, was such a disaster. Some of my showroom friends literally had to ask I think it might have been at Dallas. They told me, they were like, "So who owns you now? What are you doing?" And the lady who they were talking to at I don't know whether it was Monte Carlo or Seagull or wherever showroom they were at, was like, "Yeah, I know, it's confusing. It's crazy." So what happened was some company bought Generation. Not 100% sure who, because it didn't really last too long, because somebody else took over Generation, and that somebody else was Visual Comfort. And what Visual Comfort is a really designer brand. They've got like furniture and lighting and all that sort of crap. And anyways, they took over and, they kept sort of doing their own thing. I think they took advantage of some of the partnerships things that Monte Carlo already had. It's that, or it was the other way around. Monte Carlo and all those other brands took advantage of what Visual Comfort had been doing. And it was clear that Visual Comfort wasn't trying to, well, they were certainly trying to run the name down, but they were certainly trying to keep a hold of the lines that these brands had. They were clearly trying to expand it, make it their own, and make it to what they thought was better. Whether it is actually better, it's hard to say, because this is going to be the first year where we really begin to see what's going on there, and it might take a few other extra years just to see exactly what happens. But yeah, so they slowly started removing most of the Monte Carlo from the book, to where the most recent book, it literally just said Monte Carlo Fan Collections in really small writing with big Visual Comfort & Co. on the bottom. So it was at this point where, pretty much the Monte Carlo name was already gone. And, I had a couple of people tell me, oh, did you know that now that that Monte Carlo is like going away? I'm like, yeah, I did. I've known for quite a long time, because it's pretty dang obvious when pretty much all the branding, everything that you would see from them slowly is starting to get stripped away into nothing, and everything is changing. There's not too many old Monte Carlo products left either. They're clearly trying to forget about that, move to a whole new level of designer. And yeah, I believe that's about where I'm going to stop, because this year in 2022, well, in late 2020 or 2022 is when they announced that they would be officially merging Tech Lighting, Monte Carlo, the Seagull collection, and the Designer collection, or whatever, so Signature collection, whatever it is from Generation. All those would become Visual Comfort & Co., and they would all be merged onto one website. And as of early 2023, that is what has happened. And now everything you want is on there. And for this year, all the old catalogs are still there. I don't know when we'll see new ones. And on the actual product page, they still list some of the designers. And for the ceiling fan, some of them still say Monte Carlo. So I don't know whether Monte Carlo is ever going to show up in these catalogs or whether they are eventually going to get rid of that. I can't say. Keep in mind, this is like one of the first years of them actually trying this and fully integrating everything into being Visual Comfort. So it might take a while before we really start to see some of that go away. I honestly do not know. But what I do know is that for the next few years, I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on Visual Comfort, seeing what they do to what was the Monte Carlo fan line, because at this point, the name is dead. Monte Carlo is gone. And yeah, that's about where I'm going to end this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.